Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm doing weeks 1 and 2 of my 2024 reads. This year I've gotten off to a very leisurely start, so I didn't finish anything the first week of the year, but in the second week I was able to finish a couple of books that were on my anticipated releases list, so that made me pretty happy. Timestamps and content warnings are in the description box below. First, I finished A Little Luck by Claudia Piñeiro, translated from Spanish by Frances Riddle. This is by the author of Elena Knows, which I had read last year and quite enjoyed, so I was looking forward to picking up this one. It's sort of a contemporary mystery thriller with some family drama as well. It is basically about a woman who left Argentina 20 years ago after something that isn't really explained but sounds quite bad happened. Just abandoned her family, abandoned everything, and just left to start a new life in the US. But now, 20 years later, for work, she has to go back, and she thinks that nobody will recognize her because she looks totally different and sounds totally different, but she's also afraid that maybe they will. And so as we go through, we have this tension of, will anybody recognize her, but also what happened 20 years ago. And as we go along in the story, we get little bits and it sort of fills in things. I think this was really interesting in terms of like the way that the tension was built. I thought was pretty effective, but also just being in the head of this woman who is kind of terrified. She's very traumatized and clearly has not moved on from 20 years ago, and learning what happened and what led to that, and just sort of the reflections on society and family and the expectations of people and the way that you fit roles or don't fit roles. I think all of that was really, really interesting. It was a little bit more dramatic than I liked, and it kind of tied up in a neat little bow at the end, maybe neater than I think makes tons of sense. But other than that, I thought this was a pretty gripping read and I had a fun time with it. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read No Sweet Without Brine by Cynthia Manick. This is a poetry collection that is really interesting. It kind of deals with a lot of identity, about being a Black woman, about Black culture, about just sort of celebrating self and, kind of commentary on what it's like, but just a lot of joy is in this poetry collection. A lot of refusing to kind of accept other people putting her down or anything like that, and just loving herself. There's a lot of self-portrait poems in this. I thought that it was really cool. There's a lot of interesting play with form and language. There's really good imagery in this. I think some of the poems went over my head a bit just because I'm not connected enough to Black culture to understand a lot of the references. So I was a little lost for some of them, especially in the first section of the poetry collection. But there were so many fantastic poems in this, and I really enjoyed the rhythm and just the word choice of this. So, and plus I just always like poems that are about identity, so I quite enjoyed this, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, so those are the books that I read this week. If you guys have read these, I'd love to hear your thoughts or if you're interested in them. I'd also just like to know how the beginning of your 2024 reading is going. Were you off to a little bit of a slower start like me, or were you like jumping in, totally ready, picking up tons of books? I'd love to hear about how your year is getting started. Just leave me a comment down below.